Dear participants, please wait for a while. We are currently experiencing a technical issue. The session will begin shortly.
Fridya, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
So, a warm good afternoon to all of you. Myself, Ms. Nima, will be your host for today's session. This is the seventh lecture for season 5 of Chrysalis for the academic year 2025-26. A warm welcome to all the esteemed guests of today's program. First, I would like to welcome former principal Professor Chako Joseph, Head of the Department Susan Joshi, Mr. Lakshmi S. Menon, today's presenter, and Dr. R Vijayalakshmi, our moderator. And I welcome all the participants on behalf of Chrysalis team to today's session. Even in the absence, I would like to mention our principal, Dr. Diazidi, Professor Betsy Polsey, Director of the Research, and I also welcome them. With all the blessings from the Almighty, we are here to enrich you with another informative session. Chrysalis entered to celebrate academic legacy and foster intellectual exchange, starting from humble in-house lecture sessions in November 2021 to pay homage to former teachers of our department, Reverend Father Anthony Kuchikar CMI, Dr. Tanya Menon, and Professor Paul Davis. The lecture series has emerged into a dynamic platform for researchers spanning from distinguished professors to emerging scholars who reaffirm the relevance of literary studies and the humanities in an increasingly automated world. Today, we proudly invite our speaker, Ms. Lakshmi S. Menon, faculty scholar and former faculty, Department of Language and Literature English, Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prashanti Nilaya, Andhra Pradesh. We have with us Dr. R Vijayalakshmi, Assistant Professor, our moderator for today's session, Department of English Language and Literature, Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Andhra Pradesh. We had won, she had also won St. Aloysius National Best Research Paper Award a year ago and for her co-authored paper on the topic of new media and gender in Pakistani illustrations. On behalf of St. Aloysius, I proudly invite you to chair today's session on interpretation in the Anthropocene, Phenomenology and Hermeneutics as research frameworks in literary studies. I welcome Dr. R Vijayalakshmi and now it's all yours.
A very warm good evening to all of you gathered over here. And we are happy to be associating with Chrysalis and St. Aloysius College for this, erudite academic lecture series. So today's speaker, as Nima has mentioned, is Lakshmi Menon. She is a faculty scholar and former faculty at the Department of Languages and Literature, English, at Sri Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Anantapur, Andhra Pradesh. She submitted her doctoral thesis on emergence of the spiritual self in selected English poems and used the methodology of phenomenological hermeneutics with an additional lens of Neo-Vedanta theory of consciousness. Her interest in literary studies range from 19th century British literature, American literature, literary theory and criticism to an emerging interest in mythopoetics. Lakshmi's other interests include poetry, blogging, media, and she has also been an editor and freelancer. She's passionate about exploring the methodology of phenomenology and cross-cultural hermeneutics. So her talk today is on some aspects of phenomenology and hermeneutics as applied to literary studies. So out of this vast subject, she'll be discussing certain important definitions, and I'm very sure that we will have many takeaways. So shall we, over to you, Ms. Lakshmi. Lakshmi Menon, over to you. Shall we begin?
Thank you, Nima. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Vijayalakshmi also. Thank you, Dr. Betsy Paul, for giving me this opportunity to present tiny fraction of the vast subject of phenomenology and hermeneutics. Um, I have been working on this for the past few years, and I just felt I wanted to share a few thoughts on what I have learned. I'm still learning. I'm not an expert in this field, I must say, and I'm sure there might be people who are, much more knowledgeable than me in this. But so whatever I have understood of phenomenology and hermeneutics, and people in the know-how will wonder why I have selected such a huge topic, because both phenomenology and hermeneutics are equally vast. uh, However, I'm planning to just touch upon a few key concepts and ideas that will help a early career researcher to maybe embark on a phenomenological dissertation in literary studies. So that is my aim in today's talk. And phenomenology as a discipline actually emerged in the early part of the 20th century, and hermeneutics a little after that. Hermeneutics is a very old discipline, as we all know, but hermeneutics in conjunction with phenomenology, as presented by Martin Heidegger after Husserl, his teacher and professor, founded it, um, emerged again in the, you could say, in the interwar years in Europe. So why should we talk about phenomenology and hermeneutics in the 21st century in the Anthropocene? Because that is quite a valid question, I guess. It's not a new field. But what is new is that it has emerged in a powerful new, I would say, attire, especially in the social sciences. It is as if, social sciences have discovered the potency of phenomenology and hermeneutics, and it is slowly also coming into literary studies. Now, the intent of my talk, as I mentioned, is, phenomenology and hermeneutics in the Anthropocene. So, Nima, shall I present it and then you can, right, as we agreed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Should
So,
I press start it now?
yeah, I'm going to just start presenting, and when I come to that particular slide, after that you can present it from the next one, right?
Okay.
Okay. So, let's see how it goes. If I'm able to do it, then I think good, right? Uh, 1 minute. Just tell me whether it's visible. Okay. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so the topic for today I have selected is interpretation in the Anthropocene, phenomenology and hermeneutics as research frameworks in literary studies. Now, these are the contents that I intend to cover in today's presentation. So, the Anthropocene, what is the Anthropocene? And um, in discussing the origins of the Anthropocene, I will link it up with phenomenology. Then, phenomenology, the philosophical context. Here, I must add that phenomenology has three roles: it is a philosophy, it is a methodology, and it is also a method. So that makes it very complex, but it also makes it very interesting. And the one of the problems that phenomenological researchers face is that none of the founders of phenomenology, that is, Husserl, the original founder of phenomenology in the 20th century, and Heidegger, who added the hermeneutic dimension to it, both of them did not actually prescribe any method as to how to use it for interpreting life situations in the social sciences or in the literary studies. So, what has happened is there is no fixed method, but methods have evolved from the later philosophers who have come into the picture. So that is why the scope of phenomenology and hermeneutics is very wide and vast, and sometimes it can get a little confusing. So that is why I thought I will just touch upon certain key terms so that we can confine it to certain frameworks. So basic terms in phenomenology, then hermeneutics and evolving trajectory, because hermeneutics is a much older discipline than phenomenology. But as I said, in conjunction with phenomenology, it has become, hermeneutic phenomenology or phenomenological hermeneutics. So here also there are some basic terms that we should keep in mind. Then I just talk of the two possible directions or methods that a researcher can take, and I will try and do one sample poem at least, if time permits. So, the Anthropocene, origins and aftermath. Now, we know that the Anthropocene is the time that we are living in right now, and it is characterized by what we all know as, climate change, a planet that is degraded in its environment, disappearance of many species within a span of maybe the last 100 years or 200 years, ultra industrialization, displaced communities, natural calamities, and a very, a word that is gaining a lot of popularity today, precarity. In other words, it is just, always being in a precarious situation. We do not know what is going to happen to us next. Now, I also come to what could be the causes and origins of what we today call as the Anthropocene. So I would say the first cause of the Anthropocene is anthropocentrism, which, as we all know this, that it was during the time of the Renaissance, maybe in the 15th century or so, 15th century or so, when the European world moved from what I would call as a theocentric worldview to a anthropocentric worldview. So where God used to hold sway, it now placed man in the position of God. So that is why we call it as anthropocentric. And of course, it has other names. It goes by the name of humanism. It goes by the name of man being the center of the earth, and everything according to what man wishes. Because whether it was from science or it was from religion, it was seen that man can have dominion over all other species. And the reason for that was the faculty of reason that man had. And for that, we have to, of course, come to scientism. Now, there's one more thing which I did not mention here, but it is equally important, and that is the rise of philosophy in two streams: the rise of rationalism of Descartes, uh, Leibniz, and Spinoza, and that of empiricism of Locke, Berkeley, and Hume, and then the consensus brought in by Immanuel Kant. So, scientism and philosophy. Now, we know that scientism developed, Isaac Newton, Kepler, there were a host of scientists at that point of time who were looking at the phenomenal world from the point of view as the subject, the man, the consciousness, looking at the object, the phenomenal world. However, the seeds for this separation between subject and object was, as we all know, laid by Descartes. Cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And what this meant is that, in order to be a scientific researcher, or in order to be able to look at the world in a very scientific manner, you had to have a rational sense, a rational mind, and with that identity of rationality alone, could you be a good scientist or a good philosopher? So, the identity of man was fixed in rationalism by Descartes. And from then on, it just developed in that way in Europe. Now, this has far reaching consequences. I'll just come to that in a second. Now, obviously, along with the rise of science, there was the rise of industrialization through the Industrial Revolution and a lot of inventions and everything that happened. Now, what is the connection between this and and the Anthropocene is that because of this feeling that the rational man is, above everything, so you also, and also the subject object dichotomy meant that you see the world as the other. You're not connected to the world anymore. You see, there was a natural divine order that the world believed in. Of course, in the global south we still believe in it, but in Europe and the Western nations, they lost that belief to science, because everything now became a move from transcendentalism, that is a move from the transcendent divinity to immanence. Everything can be explained within the framework of the world. You don't need God to explain the world. And that is what is meant by Heidegger's famous statement, forgetfulness of being. Forgetfulness of the substratum of what the world is based on. And that, according to Heidegger, has had far reaching consequences. So both Husserl and Heidegger talked of uh, the other side of technology, the dark side of technology. And that is what brings in phenomenology. And that is the reason that Husserl actually he was a mathematician, but he went into philosophy full time and founded phenomenology as a system that can replace the empirical sciences, because he felt that the empirical sciences, in its what you could say, setting aside the human point of view in the name of objectivity, was actually doing a great disservice to the world and to science itself. And he proves it. So I come to the next part, phenomenology, the philosophical context. And in that, I would just explain a few things of what Husserl was, saying or trying to say, in order to make phenomenology as the basis of a new, I would say, a new worldview. So in that, uh, now before I come to that, I let me also say that this is just I would say a diversion, but necessary, because we are literary students of literature. So these are some of the uh, you could say similarities between literary studies and social sciences. It's a comparison between literary studies, social sciences, and the natural or the pure sciences. And as you see, in literary studies, the subject, that is what we look at, is very similar. We look at the human world depicted through imaginative and literary texts. And the relationship between us and the natural world, it is still there in literary studies, right? The social sciences looks at human actions, social interactions. So as you can see, human being is the common element between literary studies and social sciences. So that is why social science, the methodologies of social sciences can be incorporated into literary studies, and phenomenology is one of them, as in a qualitative methodology. But if you look at the natural and pure sciences, it has nothing to do with human actions. It is only about the natural world, the physical universe, the phenomenal world. There is no human being involved in it. The human being is out of the picture in the name of objectivity. Now we come to basis of knowledge generation. So obviously, interpretation of text through different lenses in literary studies, literary theories, comparative studies, interdisciplinary studies. And so phenomenology can be one of the interdisciplinary methods. In social sciences, you actually do field studies mostly, right? So interpretations of the meanings of human experiences. What is the meaning of an experience? Anything can happen, a phenomenon can happen, but what does it mean to the human being? That is what the social sciences are about. And if we look at it closely, that is also what literary studies actually is all about. What is the meaning of an experience? Or what is the meaning of a text or experience embedded within a text, and so on and so forth? Whereas when we come to the natural sciences, we see there is a clear demarcation, because there they are determining the causality of phenomena through cause and effect paradigms. So it is strictly determining why a phenomenon happens. Now, cause and effect, of course, they deduce it. Just because one phenomenon follows another does not have to be the cause. Okay, let's remember that. They say that this happened and an A happened and then B happened, and so A is the cause of B. Much of science is based on that. Whatever it may be, a cause and effect is a very important paradigm in the natural sciences. Whereas in the literary studies and the social sciences, we do not go so much by cause effect paradigms, because human beings are so unpredictable, human beings are so diverse, that you cannot really, you know, fix human beings into a cause and effect paradigm. But certain disciplines try to do it, and then, as we all know, it ends up in disaster, right? Then we come to the intent of what are these disciplines all about. Literary studies is about interpretation, social sciences is about uh, understanding what is the meaning. So we are trying to understand the human actions, and natural and pure sciences are trying to explain phenomenon, explain the cause and effect. So as you can see, interpretation and understanding are very closely related. Now, coming back to Husserl, and Husserl's phenomenology is called as transcendental phenomenology. And here, I will just deal with certain terms that are important to phenomenology, Husserl's brand of phenomenology. So the first thing is what he calls as intentionality. That's a very important term in Husserl's philosophy. It's called intentionality of consciousness. And this one term was used by Husserl to, I would say, almost discredit the empirical or the natural sciences. Because, what Husserl said was consciousness is always directed towards something. Always. If either external in the external world or internally within the mind. Let me just take a break. Are the slides moving, Nima?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it's coming one after the other, right? So can I continue then?
No, ma'am. The complete slide is visible now.
Is it visible? Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. In this, it's like that only. But it's clearly seen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So intentionality of consciousness refers to Husserl. We all know this, but Husserl picked this up from his teacher who was called Brentano, who was also the teacher of Freud, Sigmund Freud, by the way. And it was he who introduced the concept of intentionality of consciousness, which means that consciousness is always directed towards something. And I must also add a caveat here. Here, consciousness means ordinary mind, okay? Because in India, when you say consciousness, we always think of Vedantic level of supreme consciousness. It is not that. What they mean here is the mind being aware of something. So the mind is always aware of something, either internal or external. We are always focused on something external, or we are focused on our own internal mental states. So consciousness is always directed to something. And then Husserl says, so when you define consciousness, you will say consciousness is always consciousness of. Consciousness is always consciousness hyphen of. So consciousness of. Always conscious of something. So where is the subject-object dichotomy that the empirical sciences are talking about? It is impossible because you're always connected to something outside of you. You're always conscious of something outside of you. So you're always connected to the phenomenal world. So he says a subject object dichotomy is an illusion. That is what Husserl said. Then the other important thing is the phenomenal world that the empirical sciences talks about or investigates. So this what Husserl says is not new. This has been said by Kant before him, And it is also coming from Plato, who said, there is the world of ideas and the world of forms. Right? We know that in Western philosophy. But in the case of Kant, Kant made a distinction between noumenon and phenomenon. So he said noumenon is a thing in itself, and phenomenon is what is given to us through perception. So, phenomenon is the world as it is appearing to us through perception. So, it is like we are constructing the world. And how do we do it? So, this is a very important finding by Kant. I'm sure many of you are familiar with a priori, structures of the mind, right? Or intellectual intuitions. For example, when we see the world, even if it is a small newborn baby, when it sees the world, there are already structures in the mind through which the world comes to him or her. For example, he calls these as categories, and he gives a very broad explanation of what it is. And but let me just stick to two: time and space. Whatever comes to us in perception comes through the filters of time and space. Whether you are educated, uneducated, child, adult, man, woman, doesn't matter. Whichever corner of the world a human being is, he or she looks at the world through the filters of time and space. It is not possible to look at the world without these two, right? So, what the world actually is or really is, we do not know. There is no way of knowing, because we can only see whatever we see in perception is what is given to us through the filters of the mind. So that is why, according to Kant, the noumenal world, or the world, the thing in itself, or the world it actually is beyond perception, beyond reason. And that is how he, of course, he says, making way for faith, compromising on science to make way for faith, or something to that effect, he says, because he puts the soul, God, and all immortality of the soul and God and all out of the purview of reason. Reason can only deal with what comes to us through appearances. Now, Husserl also takes this point but builds on it. And what he says is and phenomenology, the phenomenological approach is this, that is, the world appears to us through the structures of the mind, but the difference here is phenomenology does not care or bother whether what is given to us through the mind or through the structures of the mind, does it exist or not, does it have a real physical existence or not, is not important to phenomenology. If it has appeared in your experience, then it is important. It can be investigated. So that is why the scope of phenomenology becomes very vast. So, for example, if somebody says, that they are constantly having hallucinations, now other disciplines may judge it. They may say that, oh, it's all in your mind, and maybe there are some other causes for it and all that. But phenomenology will say, you have experienced it, so then it is worthy of investigation. So this is where phenomenology becomes very important in investigating phenomena that are, I would say, marginalized, out of the way, which are not taken up by other disciplines. So that way, phenomenology is a very apt discipline for those kind of situations. Of course, it can be used in any situation, but especially these kind of situations or phenomenon. Then we come to another very important aspect that Husserl talks about, and that he calls as the natural attitude. So he makes a distinction between the natural attitude and the phenomenological attitude. So what he means by this is, the natural attitude is our everyday attitude of taking everything for granted. We just live our lives, go on our way. Sometimes we are struck by joys and sorrows, and then we sit up and take notice. But at all other times, our lives are very mechanical. Now, that he says is the natural attitude. So, supposing you look at a phenomenon, the natural attitude is already there in us, because we are already conditioned to look at a phenomenon in a particular manner. We are conditioned by what we have heard, what we have seen, what we have studied, what is given to us by science, right? What is given to us by our peers, family, so many things we have which are preconceived notions about anything that we encounter in life. Now, that is a natural attitude. And what Husserl says is, when you have that kind of attitude, you miss what that phenomenon really is. You're not going to the root of the phenomenon. You do not understand the phenomenon in its entirety. So that is why he introduces the concept of epoche, or it is also called as bracketing. So in epoche or bracketing, what happens is you uh, bracket out these preconceived notions. Say supposing you see a rainbow. I'm just giving a very common example. You see a rainbow. The first, I would just ask the audience here. Uh, so, uh, Nima, can you start sharing from the next slide? I'm going to stop sharing here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, I would just like to ask the audience a question. That is, supposing you see a rainbow, what is the first reaction that you have? Can anybody just speak up? It is a phenomenon, if you take it as a phenomenon.
Quietly, like astonished to look at, pleasing.
Yes. Astonishment, right? Any other you know
Wonder.
magical? Wonder, correct? Yes. So wonder, magical, astonishing. So but then what happens next? After you feel that, what happens next?
We try to map where is it forming,
Yes. What else?
and we do realize maybe it must have rained because of our preconceived knowledge. It must have rained, and there is a little sunlight piercing through. So maybe the rainbow is formed. Maybe just based on our existing knowledge, we just come up with assumptions.
Correct. So we are using science for that, right?
Yes, yes.
A pre understanding of science, we are using it, and then the wonder. What happens to the wonder and the magic?
It
That
all.
remains. I think that remains, and
Okay.
we just want to let it continue. We wouldn't want it to end.
We wouldn't want it to end, but the minute you start analyzing it or seeing it through the prism of physics, what happens then? Does the
Then the
wonder
magic is
remain?
gone. The magic is
Magic
gone.
is gone. Aishwarya, what happens then? Does the wonder remain?
No, ma'am. It just becomes another subject to look at.
Right, isn't it? So that is what Husserl is talking about. What he means is that when you start reflecting, when you start reflecting on the phenomenon and you apply all the filters that we are so used to, the pre-reflective the pre-reflective reaction or the reaction of immediacy of any experience, that disappears. But the subject of phenomenology is the pre-reflective experience. Pre-reflective experience is the subject of phenomenology. Why? Because Husserl says we have to capture the wonder of phenomenon. So that is what we need to do through phenomenology. And that is why he says the natural attitude, whatever we all say. Rainbow is just an example, but everything in life is like that. You go for say you go traveling. Everybody goes traveling and everybody will post on social media, and the pictures also look similar. The wonder of travel is lost, isn't it? So that is what's happening to us. And he says the way to get out of that is to use the method of epoche or bracketing. So that's one thing. I'll come back to that a little later. Now the other two terms that he has is noema and noesis. Now, Noema is, this is actually building on what Kant says. And then, of course, he goes on his own way. That is, he says that when you see an object, okay, let me ask another question. When you see a tree, okay, there is a tree outside your window, and you see it today, you see it tomorrow. Is it the same tree? How do you know it's the same tree? Any answer to that? Or do you see the same tree every day? Yeah, okay. Supposing there is a huge, mango tree, okay, outside your window. In the summer, it's full of mangoes. In the winter, what happens? Are there mangoes there in winter?
No, there is some change that we observe, a seasonal change,
Then how do you know it's the same tree?
because it's located there. So,
Okay.
based on every day looking at it, it's there, like as a permanent phenomena in our mind, that it's situated there.
All right. But the tree we look at today and the tree we look at tomorrow are actually not the same, isn't it? Let's leave the tree aside. Let's look at the sunset. The sunset that you saw today and the sunset that you see tomorrow, or the full moon that you see today, and of course full moon can't be the same, but let's say the sunset or the sunrise. They're not the same every day, but we still know that it is a sunset, it is a tree. We still know that, right?
Yes.
Now, yeah, we know that. Now, so what Husserl says is objects are not dead. In the empirical sciences, objects have no life. Do they have life in the empirical sciences? An object is just an object, it's a dead thing. It is just something to be examined. But in phenomenology, an object is not a dead entity, it is a thing. It has life and it projects towards us, it moves towards us. So today the tree will send you a particular sensation and you notice it. Tomorrow just try doing it with anything commonly in your neighborhood. Okay, I just telling all of you to try it out like a small experiment. Take a small tree or anything, and a bush or anything in nature or anything, and then look at it very carefully every day, and you will see that it is not the same thing every day. So those impressions that we get, of the same tree, but in its different manifestations, are called the noemata. So we have different noema, noema 1, noema 2, noema 3. And in the mind, it combines to form the object of perception. So the different noemata, they're all different. And they prove that the object is not dead. It is trying to speak to us. It is revealing itself to us in different ways, but it needs that we notice it. You give time for it. You pay attention to it. Only we pay attention to it, we know that the same tree can appear in different ways, right? It doesn't need to be a rainbow all the time. It can be any object given to us in consciousness. When we pay attention, we know that the object is not a dead object, it is actually a thing. And that's what Heidegger later calls it, the thinginess of the thing, he says. Okay, and then the whole process of how these different noemata come into us and then combine is the process of noesis. Next slide, please. All right. So these are some of the, I've just repeated them here. We saw what is intentionality, what is natural attitude, epoche, bracketing. So what is meant by epoche or bracketing? Remember, he was a mathematician. So he's using a mathematical term by which when you want to get at the essence of an object. So when we discuss the term, the different noemata, right? So what Husserl says is, regardless of what, let's take a tree, regardless of what the tree is manifesting to us at different times of the day, it is different, depending on what light falls on it or which direction you're looking at it also, isn't it? Which angle you're looking at it, the tree appears different. Now, when the tree is appearing as different, but we all know it's a tree, the same tree. That is the essence of that tree. Now let's move to something else. Let's look at a cat. Now we all know that there are black cats and green cats and whatever colors of cats. What would you call a tiger? Uh, the genus of the tiger. Anybody? Is it a cat too?
Yes, it is a cat.
It
Wild.
is. It is a cat, right? Now, how do we know it's a cat? It doesn't. If you have a small kitten in the house, then a tiger doesn't resemble the kitten. Then how do we know it's a cat? Why should we know it's a cat?
uh,
Why should we call it a cat?
because of some features that cats also acquire, like they do, how they respond to the surroundings is pretty much similar to how tigers to have some traits.
Okay, but there could be other animals that respond in the same way, right?
Yes.
So how do you know that that is not a cat, but this is a cat? This is what phenomenology is all about. So that's why I'm giving this example. So that is called as, uh, we saw how one object can appear in different ways and it is combined into a single object, right, in our mind. We also now see that there can be many examples of a family of objects, like a cat. But we know it's a cat. We know a tiger is a cat. We know I don't know whether a lion can be called a cat. I don't know, so I'm not using it. But we know a giraffe is certainly not a cat, right? Now, how do we arrive at that? We arrive at that because of something called imaginary variations. So that's another term. I've not put it here, but it's called imaginary variations. So basically, what Husserl is trying to say and what phenomenology is trying to say is a phenomenon, any phenomenon. It can be an object, it can be an occurrence, it can be an event, it can be a psychological disorder, it can be a trauma, it can be anything. Okay, anything that we experience either as an object or as a subjective experience, whatever it may be, it actually it can come to us in different forms, in different variations, but there is something that holds it together, and that is what he calls it as the eidetic essence of that phenomenon. So the function of phenomenology, Husserl's phenomenology, is to arrive at the eidetic, he calls it eidetic, that is the essential essence, I would say, of that particular phenomenon. So supposing somebody is going through a trauma and you want to do a study on that, and you want to understand what is this thing called trauma. Now, different people have different traumas, right? But if you do a study on trauma, then you will interview many people with traumas, and then you will write down whatever their reactions are. You will arrive at the characteristics of trauma, and out of that, imaginary variations, because there will be different variations in what you are finding out, but there will also be things that are common, and that will help you to fix the character or the nature of the phenomenon, and that is called the eidetic essence of that phenomenon. Okay, I'm just putting it in a very like a very brief way. Okay, now how many of you have heard the term lived experience? Do you use the word lived experience? Please raise your hand so that I can see. Okay, only Aishwarya has heard of it, nobody else? Okay, maybe I'm not able to see the screen. Can you all speak up? Like, how many of you have heard the term? Yes, I think many people have heard the term lived experience. Can you tell me what lived experience is in your view? Anybody? Like, what is your understanding of lived experience? What do you mean by lived experience? Anyone?
Encapsulating the moment in our consciousness.
Okay. Any moment?
Yes, I mean,
But
mostly
it's called experience, lived experience. So it can't be just a moment, right?
a complete journey of something that one has experienced. Like,
Okay. Anyone else? When you use the word lived experience, it is very commonly used now. What do you mean by the term lived experience? Anyone? No?
Nowadays there's a tendency to to contrast lived experience with something which is simulated. So lived experience is reality.
Okay. What could be the contrast to a lived experience? Like, how is it different from, say, ordinary experience?
uh,
Anything on that? Yeah.
Something which is simulated,
Oh, simulate. Oh, okay. So what you're saying is not a real experience, you're
not
saying.
real experience,
Virtual experience.
virtual. Yes.
Oh, I see. So, okay. So you're saying lived experience is what we actually go through and Okay, that's one way of looking at it. In fact, I didn't think of that. Anybody else? I think somebody has, yeah, Lakshmi, I think, has raised her hand. Anyone else? How would you define? So, Ashok Sengupta says it is a difference between real and virtual. Anyone else as to what could be a lived experience? Okay, Aishwarya was saying something, a moment, right?
Yes, ma'am. Something one has already experienced and they are just referring to it. Maybe uh, something that can be felt, something that is intangible but can be felt.
Okay, but why call it lived experience? You can just call it experience, right?
Because someone who's been through that has it's a first person experience. Like the
Okay.
person has been in the first person experience, and something that is beyond explanation, I would say.
Okay, so what you're saying is something that is experienced firsthand, I guess. Yes, Lakshmi Kantam and Vijay Lakshmi. Yeah, one after the other. Can you just tell me? I got that. So one answer says lived experience is different from virtual experience, as in real and virtual. Another person says that it is something you have experienced. Is that what you mean? Something that you have experienced. It is not second-hand experience, right?
Yes, something that is like you have embodied, you have experienced something raw. It's in front, like happened in front of you, within you, or you
Okay,
were part of it.
first person experience. Yes, Lakshmi Kantam, please unmute and speak. Vijay Lakshmi,
Yes, actually, what I thought is similar to what Aishwarya was trying to arrive at.
yeah.
Something which is very private and personal, which others cannot access. So something which is very personal experience is something which is very personal and private to you. But so that it escapes scientific analysis in the sense that others cannot experience what you have experienced. That is what I would understand as lived experience, something which only you have access to, and hence others cannot. Others are actually outside of the experience, and that is what I thought.
Okay, so what do you mean to say is it's a personal, private experience?
Yeah, so it is lived by you, and hence it may not be amenable to an analysis from an outside view. That is
Okay.
what.
Okay, then what is the use of it? No? If it is not relevant to other people, then what is the use of it? Supposing I'm doing a phenomenological exposition on a lived experience of some kind, say an experience of travel or an experience of something. What is the use of doing it if others can't relate to it? No? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just asking these questions just to stimulate some thinking. Uh, I think Lakshmi Kantam. Okay, I'll go move ahead. Okay, let's leave it at that. So lived experience. Okay, let me just tell you what actually in phenomenology what it means. What it means to say lived experience. Okay, now lived experience need not be something very something very special or very first of all, let me say that the term lived experience or the German term is Erlebnis. Okay, I'll just put it in the maybe chat box. It's called Erlebnis. That's a German term for it. That was coined actually by Dildai, the social scientist, who said it is a relationship, the experience of relating to the world. Any experience that we have is always part of the larger world, no? Like you may be having a private or personal, whatever experience we have, it is always part of the human world in which we are in. So that is what Wilhelm Dilthey talked about lived experience. But when it comes to Husserl, what he meant by lived experience is also called as going back to the things themselves, going back to the things themselves, or he actually said "Zu den Sachet." That is, it's all German in one sense, so that's what makes phenomenology also a little more complex than usual. But so what he means to say is a lived experience is an experience that you have of anything. So it could be real, it could be virtual, it could be anything. It doesn't matter. It could be personal, it could be public, it could be private, it could be anything. What all of you have said is actually imaginary variants of the lived experience. But what is the lived experience itself? So the lived experience is the answer to what is a lived experience would be okay. Uh, Meera, I will come to your question at the end. All right. I can see it in the chat, but I think we'll come to the questions at the end. So, a lived experience is the primal experience, or the answer to what makes it this. What makes it this? Supposing you have an experience of trauma, right? So it goes back to the eidetic essence of the experience. So if you have an experience of trauma, the lived experience of trauma, what is trauma? It will have an eidetic essence to it. So lived experience is going through the eidetic essence of an experience. Does that make sense? It encompasses all your answers, but I think it also adds a little bit to, uh, you know, it is something that we don't notice. The lived experience is something that we don't notice, but the minute we put our attention to it, it comes alive, and then we start thinking of what it actually means to us. What is the meaning that experience has for me? That is the lived experience. It is not having any kind of experience, because what we tend to do is we walk through life collecting experiences. But the minute you sit and think, what is the meaning of this experience to me, then it becomes a lived experience. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes, ma'am. So, can we call it as, let's say, it is a foundation of what we include? I mean,
hmm.
foundation layer of meaning that precedes our interpretation.
Yes, absolutely. It is pre-reflective. It is pre-reflective. Because once we start reflect, see, that's a difference between phenomenologically paying attention to something and reflecting on something in a natural attitude. Okay, there's a difference. So what you're saying is a pre-reflective attitude where you try to understand the significance of that experience to you. So it is not based on rationality, it is not based on theory, it is based on the fundamental essence of an experience. That is actually the lived experience. Okay, and then there is another term for it which is brought in by Heidegger and Gadamer. I'll come to that. Now, Lebenswelt. Lebenswelt is another term which is also used along with lived experience. It is the life world. That is, my world is different from your world, though we live in the same world, isn't it? We may live in the same place, we may be in the same department, in the same college, or sit in the same class, but my world will still be different from your world. So, life world is something that is unique to every individual, and that is also what makes experience unique. So you can be having the same experience, but your life world makes it special for you. Okay, so that is what he means by Lebenswelt or life world. Again, we take it for granted, but if we sit and put a phenomenological eye on it, then it comes alive as something that is noticeably belonging to me, my life world. And Noema noises I've already kind of covered. Okay, next slide, please. Now we come to Heidegger and hermeneutic phenomenology. Now, Heidegger, next slide. Okay. So, what Heidegger says is, that he talks about something called, can you, okay, I think I should have put the next slide here. Anyway, no, leave it at that. So, what Heidegger says is, he takes up from where Husserl has left, and he says, it is true that, we need to look at experience from a phenomenological perspective, but he brings in the dimension of interpretation to phenomenology. Now, there are two approaches to phenomenology, two major approaches. So, what phenomenological method does is, I think we have discussed a bit of the methodology of phenomenology, but what the method of phenomenology does is, it describes. It is called as description. So, supposing you are having an experience or you are interviewing people to find out the eidetic essence of an experience, then you just ask yourself or those people to describe that experience. So, supposing you are, maybe you are investigating something called sports injury, okay? You get injured during sports. That is a phenomenon you want to examine. So, you examine it, you ask all these people, what does it mean when you get injured playing your favorite sport? So there is no reflection, there is no analysis, there is nothing. There is just a description, simple, direct description of what it means to be injured while playing a sport. So it is pre reflective, there is no filter, there is nothing. It is your authentic experience of being injured during a sport. So that is what happens in phenomenology, our phenomenological method. Okay, first you collect experiences which are descriptive in nature. So, description is one of the important methods of phenomenology before you can get to the eidetic essence or all the other things that we discussed. But when it comes to Heidegger, Heidegger's take was that, when we are going through an experience, we are not just actually describing it, we are also interpreting it. There is no human existence without interpretation. However much we say that, we can have the raw unfiltered experience, but he says that is not true, and that is where he differed from Husserl, because he says we are pre-programmed to have certain preconceptions in our mind which makes us experience things the way we do. So for that, he has invented a term called Dasein, Dasein, Dasein. So what he means by Dasein is the human experience of the world. Regardless of who we are and where we are, all human beings have a uniquely human experience. Now, I can give another example to distinguish it. Like, for example, human beings can hear a lot of things, right? But there is a level beyond which we cannot hear, whereas a dog can. So, the human experience of a sound and a dog's experience of a sound are different. A human being sees the world in color. A dog does not have a sense of color. It sees the world in black and white. Okay, so a human sight of the world and a dog's sight of the world are different. So that peculiarly human experience of life is termed by Heidegger as Dasein, or being in the world. So he says when we are born, we are already in the world. We don't have a choice. We are born into a world which is already existing before we are born into it. And that is why Heidegger does not believe in epoche or bracketing, because he says there are certain things you can never bracket off because it is a part of your psyche as a human being. So that is where the phenomenological hermeneutic philosophy differs from the transcendental philosophy, because Husserl was looking at the transcendental essence of a phenomenon, whereas Heidegger is looking at what we interpret about a phenomenon. So that is where they diverge. Obviously, when the philosophy diverges, the methods and methodology also will diverge. Okay, so I just gave you one difference between them. Okay, can you just click again, Nima? Okay, now these are like some of the tenets of hermeneutics. Like, the goal of hermeneutics is understanding, which is different from explanation. So, what happens in hermeneutics is you are trying to understand, you're trying to arrive at understanding and not an explanation. And understanding always involves a dialogue between the text and the reader. And another important thing here is the matter of experience. When you do a phenomenological interpretation of a text, you are not looking at the meaning. Or, of course, language is extremely important in phenomenology and more so in hermeneutics. But in the case of hermeneutics, you are looking more at the experience embedded in the text rather than anything else. So you're not looking at opinions, you're not looking at theories, you're not looking at ideologies, you're looking at the bare experience that is embedded within the text. So that means you are looking at so as Van Manen, another interpreter, says, you are in a phenomenological hermeneutic reading. Okay, now I have come to Heidegger's methodology. So in a phenomenological hermeneutic reading, the text, the movement is always from experience to meaning and not from text to meaning. Of course, text to meaning is also there, but what is important is the experience embedded in the text, and from there you arrive at the meaning of that experience, whether it is for the author or whether it is for you, the reader. Okay, next, please. And in a phenomenological interpretation, because it is from experience to the experience embedded in the text to the meaning, obviously there has to be a medium, and that medium is language. So in hermeneutics, in phenomenological hermeneutics, language plays a very important role, and that is why it is very relevant for literary studies. So linguisticality. Now, linguisticality is a very, very interesting idea that Heidegger brings in. Next, please, click. Now, linguisticality, according to Heidegger, can anybody guess what it means? What is linguisticality? Linguisticality.
Is it something to do with the importance of language and the interpretation?
Okay, language, obviously, language and interpretation. Anything else beyond that, like apart from that? Linguisticality. Anything?
Sound?
No.
Phonetics?
Actually, no. It is inclusive of that, but it goes beyond that. Anyone? Okay.
Maybe to the usage of language in order to, like, we have talked about lived experience, right? So
uh,
maybe how we can retrospect it through language and how we articulate it.
Articulation is a good word,
Okay.
actually. Articulation. Can you define what you mean by articulation?
Maybe just describing how we have lived, like the entire structures of the experience.
Okay, fine. So let me come to the word articulation and then I'll go to linguisticality, because here there is a difference between how phenomenology approaches language and how other things like structuralism and all approach language. So Shalini, you were mentioning what was the word you used? You were mentioning something.
Interpretation.
Interpret, no, after that you use the word
Phonetics?
phonetic. Yeah. So I come to that. See, in the case of, no, those who are familiar, I mean, we all know that in linguistics we have the code and the message. Yes or no? Please raise hands, people, so that I can see a few at least. So code and message, these are the two aspects of langue and parole. Yes. Lang and parole, code and message, these are, yes, yeah, you can do that. So code and langue and parole, code and message. Now we know that in structuralism, we give importance to the code, right? And the underlying structure of language. Whereas in hermeneutics, okay, and this is very important, in hermeneutics, the importance is given to the message. So if in structuralism and all associated disciplines, Sassurin linguistics based, okay, Shalini. So there you're giving importance to the underlying structure of language or the langue or the code. But in hermeneutics, this is from Paul Ricoeur. Actually, he has written a few books on this. In hermeneutics, the emphasis is on the message or on the individual example or manifestation of the linguistic code. So that is an important distinction between hermeneutics and structuralism. Okay, just by the by, I wanted to mention it. Now, linguisticality, according to Heidegger, is the capacity of human beings for language, the very capacity for language. Will you say that all beings have that? Do other beings or do other animals have the capacity for language? No, isn't it? Only human beings, to as far as we know, maybe dolphins also have, I believe, I don't know, but according to what is known till now, it is only the human being who has the capacity for language. Any child who is born will have an inherent capacity for language. That inherent capacity for language is called linguisticality. So that is what Heidegger says, that before you even, because there is this trope that we construct the world, structuralism and other disciplines say that we construct the world through language. So their hermeneutics differs from them by saying that we may be constructing the world through language, but how is it that we are born with that capacity for language? And why this is important is because in our eagerness to say that we are constructing the world through perception during the Enlightenment, we are constructing the world through the structures of the mind. In the 20th century, we are constructing the world through the structures of language. So then Heidegger said, you're forgetting a very essential thing. You're forgetting being, be capital. You're forgetting that which has given you the ability to, ability for linguistics. You're forgetting that source or that base or that substratum which has given you the ability to do all this as human beings, as the same. And that, he says, is why we are in the Anthropocene today, because we have forgotten the basis, we have forgotten the primordial connection that we have with the world and with other beings, all held together by capital B, being. So according to Heidegger, the reason for, of course, he did not use the word Anthropocene, but he was referring to that because he goes on he was not against technology, but against the ill effects of technology, which the West faced during the world wars. Despite huge technological progress, there were two devastating wars that almost ended the Western civilization, right? So they were writing in that context. And today it is climate change. Tomorrow it will be AI or a robotic takeover, whatever it may be. So the underlying problem is the forgetfulness of being. Forgetting that linguisticality or the very capacity for language has come from something that is beyond the manifested world. Okay, next, please. Yes. So the other aspect of hermeneutics when you try to decode a text would be historicity. So historicity, yeah, next. Historicity is the context of the text. So because Heidegger does not believe in epoche and bracketing, according to Heidegger's method, we have to, instead of bracketing out, we have to actually acknowledge the different contexts that we are a part of. Because remember, we are thrown into a world we did not choose, right? So you can see how existentialism, bifurcated away from phenomenological hermeneutics. This is how it started. So the text is historical. There is a distance between us and the text. We are not the author. The text is speaking to us, the author's voice speaks to us through the text, but the author is not there to tell us what he or she actually means. So we need to be in a dialogue with the text. And we need to acknowledge that the text is historical, it is part of a context. We cannot have meanings without context. Now we are in a world, the next point will make it clear. Next, the hermeneutic circle. Now, hermeneutic circle, we all know, isn't it, that it is the relation between the parts and the whole. I think next. Yeah, relationship between the parts and the whole. I think we are all familiar with that. But there is another dimension that Heidegger talks of. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So I think I have covered most of it in this. I will now come to hermeneutic circle, experience as Erfahrung, and four structures of understanding. So with these, I come to the end of my presentation actually. So when you say hermeneutic circle, part and whole is coming to us from biblical hermeneutics, from the Enlightenment, when you say that you can understand a text better when you take up the part and connect it with the whole of the text, right? Part of the text and the whole of the text. A chapter is better understood when it is a part of the whole text. Then similarly, when you put the text, if it is a single author, if it is a play of Shakespeare, then you put Shakespeare in a canon of Shakespearean plays, his other plays, right? Then the age to which Shakespeare belonged to. So again, whole and part. So it is an ever-expanding circle, what is meant by whole and part. But Heidegger, as usual, he has to bring in the dimension of existentiality, that is our existence. So what he says is, the part and whole structure actually is a mimicking of how the mind itself experiences the world. So it is actually, the hermeneutic circle is actually a reflection of how the mind itself is apprehending the world. So the mind, the mind will, we all know, isn't it? We experience something and then we go back to it, and then we keep going back to our experiences. We don't experience anything at one shot or one goal, right? At once. So it is a hermeneutic circle. We keep circling around it, and in the process of circling on an experience, we gain more understanding of it, we gain more knowledge of it, right? So the hermeneutic circle, the same with the text. When we circle, when we are in dialogue with the text, just as we are in dialogue with the experience happening actually, we can always, and we gain more understanding of that experience that has happened to us, or that event that has happened to us. Similarly, we gain a thorough or better understanding of the text when we do this with the text. And another aspect of the hermeneutic circle, according to Heidegger, is when an author, this is what we experience as the reader. But what about the author's perspective in a text? So he says that an author has had an experience, and that experience is put into the text in the shape of a poem, in the shape of a novel or fiction or whatever form. So the hermeneutic circle here is the experience of the author and the form it is encased in. And this is very interesting because, that is how the individual experience of an author becomes a universal experience through the form. Otherwise, why should we at all read anything? If it is not relevant to us, why should we read at all? So that is another dimension to the hermeneutic circle, wherein the experience, a personal, private, individual experience becomes universal and understandable to a larger audience or the reader through encasing it in a form. And we discover more and more about this through the hermeneutic circle, which is one of the important methods of hermeneutics. Then, of course, four structures of understanding is what Heidegger says we always come with it. I just briefly covered it. And then I come to a term which is another method of hermeneutics called fusion of horizons. Now, this was actually said by a hermeneutic philosopher called Gadamer, who was a student of Heidegger, where he says that we are always in dialogue with the text. And in order to understand the text wholly, we need to be fusing our own, whatever we are, the reader is, with whatever the author is. Whatever the author is and whatever we are, there are two horizons, or there can be multiple horizons actually. Now, a true understanding of the text comes from a fusion of horizons. Okay, so that is what are some of the important aspects of both transcendental phenomenology and hermeneutical phenomenology. Next, please. And if you want to do, a thesis or a research in phenomenology, then these are the two methods that you can use. Transcendental phenomenology will look at bracketing, will look at epoche, will try to arrive at the essence of a phenomenon. It will use description. So this is the transcendental method, right? And the hermeneutic phenomenological method would be the hermeneutic circle, the fusion of horizons, and many such parameters. So when you are doing a dissertation in phenomenology, then you have to be clear that these are the two paths that you can take. Now, of course, there will be some things which will be common because after all, it is hermeneutic phenomenology, right? But these kind of, you cannot mix these methods. Like you don't have, you cannot have a hermeneutic circle in a transcendental phenomenological dissertation. Okay. And the other difference between these two is in transcendental phenomenology, you have to stick to what Husserl has said. You cannot bring in mostly you cannot bring in interdisciplinary lenses. But in hermeneutic phenomenology, you can bring in other lenses. So there are a lot of hermeneutic studies being done in conjunction with, say, feminism. So you can have feminist hermeneutics. You can have any kind of hermeneutics. I've seen studies on, neuroscience and hermeneutics, trauma studies and hermeneutics, memory studies and hermeneutics, Vedantic studies and hermeneutics. So that makes it cross-cultural, right? So when you want to do a hermeneutic study through the lens of other disciplines, you have to follow the methodology of hermeneutic phenomenology and not transcendental phenomenology. So transcendental phenomenology in the social sciences also is mostly done when you want to say, investigate a phenomenon that is very rare or that is marginalized or that is not looked at. For example, if you want to look at UFOs, just an example, or you want to look at a mystical experience, maybe people will think, the empirical sciences won't even consider it, but you want to consider it. So, for example, I came across a transcendental phenomenological study on religiosity. So, religiosity is a phenomenon. Whichever culture you may belong to, Western, Eastern, whichever religion you may belong to, religiosity is a phenomenon. So that's how phenomenology works, when you can look at it like a phenomenon. And of course, you can look at phenomenon through the hermeneutic lens that brings in interpretation, and then you bring in different interdisciplinary perspectives. Next slide. I think, do I have time to quickly go through a poem?
Yes, I would say Nima, she can go. I mean, enlighten us on that as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
I'll be
yes.
very quick because this is a very small poem. And actually, this just to demonstrate, through a poem, some aspects of phenomenology. Okay, now this is a modernist poem by William Carlos Williams, the American modernist poet, who would actually take very mundane, he would take very mundane events and then he would try to write a poem about it. So, what is he actually trying to do? Let me just read it, okay? As the cat climbed over the top of the jam closet, first the right forefoot, carefully, then the hind stepped down into the round of the empty flower pot. Before I just do a quick phenomenological analysis, can anybody tell me what this poem is about? And I do want a few more voices. Aishwarya, you go first, and then others, please follow, no? And then tell me what are your insights about this poem, and I'll bring in the phenomenological insight. Anyone? Huh? I just mentioned Aishwarya because she's been very vocal. You can read the poem again and say whether it at all makes any sense, or is it to do in is it a subject for poetry at all that you can say anything you like. There is no judgment in phenomenology, remember. So
Okay, ma'am. So I actually write haiku, and
okay,
it somewhat reminds me of Japanese short form poetry, which
yes.
often deals with the mundane, everyday activities that we get to witness.
Hmm.
However, here more than the pattern or what action or what phenomena is taking place, it's the it's the structure of the language, how it is written, how the words are framed. So it is creating different patterns instead of just giving us an entire picture. So there is movement, um,
There
and
is movement, yes.
there is movement, there is stillness. However, there are a lot of things happening, but I'm unable to like clearly conceptualize it.
No,
But
you just you okay. Phenomenology means description, right? So just describe what is there. What
okay,
is it describing?
a cat like just
What is it doing? Yeah,
jumping,
what's it
a
doing?
cat jumping around and just uh,
Imagine it. Imagine it.
yes.
Look at the words and imagine what's happening. It's a very short one event. Anyone else also, please?
It kind of creates the image of a cat daintily stepping one after the other, one foot, then the hind leg. So
Yes.
one is there is a break in the words, or rather the lines.
Yes.
Normally when we read a sentence, we read it all together. Over here, it is split. So it kind of gives the thing of movement, which is very slow and careful, probably.
Absolutely. And it's also called enjambment, right? I mean, doesn't the line is not ending in a sentence. It carries over into the next line. So that also causes movement.
Yes, ma'am. Enjavment or pivot. There is a middle word. I mean, there is some connection from starting from the top to bottom, from bottom to top. Yet the movement, the pauses is what creating suspense while we read.
Okay. Anything else? Why this? Why this? Yes, Meera, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we can find. I'm talking about the content here. I hope you
No,
would.
that's fine. That's fine. It's a
Uh,
description. It's a
yeah.
description.
See, I feel like the poet have used the cat here. It's actually like a kind of symbolic interpretation which suspends interpretation. It focuses consciousness on a single event. And I hope
Yes.
the poet is doing it very intentionally.
Hmm.
And it recreates the movement of the body.
Yes.
It's a kind of, we can say it's called a kind of embodiment. And I think it reveals the richness of everyday life. I
Absolutely.
mean,
Yeah.
it's like a very common thing, getting a very common description. But through a very common description, you are looking into the most uncommon things or something which you always leave out. Uh, and slows down. It's almost slowing down the perception to match the lived experiences of the time. That's how I felt when I read the poem.
Okay. That's a good one. Anyone else? So it is a description of a moment. It shows movement. then anything else? All these answers are correct, okay, by the way.
It is a lived experience, like we have talked about.
Lived experience of whom? You
The
or the
cat,
cat?
the cat, as well as who has, like, the poet who's witnessing the act.
Okay. Okay. So here I come to okay. Before I get into interpreting the poem, I said the lived experience also has one more meaning to it, right? Uh, and that meaning is not erlibness. Erlebnis is the lived experience, the immediacy of the moment. So the poet, also we can agree that the poet has caught the immediacy of a moment, right? The cat climbing over the top of the jam closet and very carefully, coming down, very carefully coming down. Now, we have seen cats always do this. They're very careful animals. They always fall on their feet, right? We don't even notice it. But here, the poet has noticed it, and he has put it in the form of a very short poem, which forces us to notice it. Next time you see a cat climbing down, you will remember the poem, isn't it? You will you will notice the cat. You will notice that the cat is very careful while climbing down. How the hind stepped down into the round of the empty flower pot. The cat doesn't just jump, it is very gingerly placing its foot and very carefully climbing down. So, next time you see a cat, whatever your impressions, other impressions of a cat might be, you will see this movement of carefulness in the cat, right? I think we will just unconsciously, notice it. So, what if you are the poet and you are watching a very mundane thing like a cat climbing up and then climbing down, does that normally, if a busy housewife is in the kitchen and cooking, a cat may come and you may shoo it away, right? Or if you're getting ready for college, you will not even notice it. But if you're observing it, what is the difference? Does it make any difference to you? I'm talking it in very, uh, very generic terms so that I can come to one concept. That's all. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It restores, like it gets stored in our memory, so we recall it once we observe it.
Okay. So it is not an ordinary event anymore, right?
Yeah.
It has stopped being ordinary because of the poem. In one sense. In one sense, it has stopped being an ordinary phenomenon because of the poem, right? Because of what the poet has written in very, very simple terms. So this brings me to that aspect of experience in both Heidegger and Gadamer that is called as Erfahrung. Now, Erfahrung, it is not Erlebnis. Erfahrung is a core understanding of an experience that leaves us transformed. So it is not. So let's take the example of a rainbow, for instance. Okay. Now, supposing you were depressed about something, and then suddenly you see a rainbow. A rainbow nowadays usually lasts for a few moments, right? Otherwise, you can just miss it. So you see it. Now, you might take it as a sign from divinity, or you might think that happier days are ahead. So, in one sense, the experience of a rainbow, which obviously can be explained by physics, reflection of light and all that, but it has touched you somewhere, and maybe you were. I'm just giving a very mundane example, okay? Now, supposing you were in a, feeling low down, or and you see it, and then you in some way are touched by it. Now, how many of you have had experiences like that where a common experience leaves you moved in a way that you did not expect? Anybody?
Yes, ma'am.
You can just like concisely like say any instant where It's a very common thing, but it has left you moved, and then later on you don't even know. Now, see, it can also happen when you come across a quotation in a book, or you are going by a car and you see a billboard with something written on it, okay, and then it suddenly you see it, you really see it. That is phenomenological seeing, when you actually look at something very ordinary, but in your seeing it has become extraordinary for you. Now what Heidegger and what Husserl and Heidegger and everybody is trying to tell us actually through phenomenology is that we are not actually living in an ordinary world. We are living in an extraordinary world, but we have made it ordinary. So what we need to do is we have to, recapture the wonder of ordinary life, because they are not ordinary moments that make up our life. And in fact, authentic existence, okay, according to Heidegger, authentic existence is this receptivity to life and moments of life, which begins with an openness towards life. If we are not open to life, even if a huge miracle happens to you, you will not believe it. We cannot see it. I think we all have experiences like that in our lives, no? Like something unexpected happens. You can also call it a miracle or something, something wonderful happens. We see it, we get excited by it, we are transformed by it, but when we narrate it to somebody else, they don't see what we see, and we are disappointed. So, what does that say? Well, it says that, life is full of potential, and life is full of potential for wonder. That is the message of phenomenology. Life is full of potential for wonder, but we have to be open to it. We have to be, in fact, the words used are, we have to be in a state of being exposed, precarious, and ungrounded. If we want to experience life in its fullest, in its most authentic way, we have to be completely open to whatever experience comes to us. How do we do that? We do that when we remove the filters, when we approach each day and each experience with an openness. That's what phenomenology demands of us. So, if you're doing a phenomenological dissertation on any topic, you have to be open. That attitude of openness has to come first, okay? And then only you can do it in a satisfactory manner. If you don't have this basic attitude of openness, the text will not speak to you. If you're doing a hermeneutical reading of a text, you must allow the text to speak to you. The text does speak in many voices. It's a dialogue. The author is not standing there to tell us, what he or she meant, but the text is there. So, firstly, without ideological filters, without any preconceived notions, get into a frame of mind where the text can actually speak to you, and then you understand. You can experience the wonder of the text, and then extend it to other incidences of life, and that is when our experience of life becomes authentic, when we become open and we become vulnerable. Now, as I said, precarity is a very favorite term nowadays. No, we use it in terms of climate change and all that. Means we are in a precarious situation. Now, the point is that if we are not open to life and we are not open to incidences or all that, then life will force us to it in one sense. So now that we were not open to the environment, we were taking because we were taking the environment for granted, we were exploiting the environment, we were utilizing the environment without giving value to it. So in that sense, the environment has now started to react. And that is what we are facing in the Anthropocene. When we say precarity, if only we were open from the beginning to what nature was trying to tell us, then we would not have been forced by nature and forced by natural calamities to become vulnerable. Today, we don't have a safeguard, towards earthquakes or floods or anything, right? We are vulnerable because we've been forced to be vulnerable. So I just feel that in the Anthropocene, it is not just about interpreting a text, it is also about life interpretation. It is very linked. Life interpretation is very linked to text interpretation because everything starts and ends with experience. So, with these few words, I bring my talk to a close and I thank all of you for your most patient listening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Lakshmi Menon ma'am. We would have loved to continue to listen to you perhaps for another hour or so, but certainly we have, it is now getting to be 8:45. So it is interesting to note that you began with the aspect of aura and wonder, and it so happened that you closed the talk also with recapturing the wonder. So you would mean to say that the hermeneutics of suspicion has to be bracketed out for the hermeneutics of you know receptivity and identification with the text and being open to what the text speaks to you. Would it be a quiescent position? I am wondering.
Yes, I think
Because
hermeneutics.
in current times, when we are scrambling for, when we are asked, I mean, students constitute most of the audience here. So reading against the grain is what we have been trained to be doing. So certainly in that context, and as you said, since we have moved away from being and have lost our connection with, even subjects of which are very much intimate to people like spiritual experience and other things. Certainly, phenomenology is the answer and the method. But wouldn't that question still remain in our minds? I mean, about
Yeah, I
what
think
we have to bracket. And is it all right to bracket? Yes.
I would look at, I mean, okay, this is a tough question, but I will try to answer it in the sense that hermeneutics of suspicion was coined by Paul Ricoeur, who himself is a hermeneutic philosopher, and he did not use it in a negative sense. Hermeneutics of suspicion was not used in a negative sense. He used it to refer to the theories of Marx, Freud, and Nietzsche, and you can include feminism also. So these are strategies of interpretation that interrogate the text, right? You're interrogating the text, right? Now, what Heideggerian hermeneutics tries to do is, there certainly is a scope for interrogating a text. Obviously, that always is there. But when you only interrogate a text, like for example, everybody knows about Tintin Abbey, the famous poem by Wordsworth, right? Now, one way of interrogating that poem is by new historicism, which says that Wordsworth is not talking about the industrialization, the impact of industrialization on the landscape and in the ruined abbey, and the smoke rising and all that refers to the landscape being spoilt by industrialization, and he doesn't talk about the vagrant dwellers. He just mentions it in one line, and so he's not he's not sensitive to issues of that kind. But then, okay, that might be a valid point, but that is not what the poem is about. You see, the poem is about a very different thing. The poem is about maybe the mystical experience that he had of unity with the landscape.
Excuse me,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Lakshmi. I'm sure that it might have been a very fruitful session. I could hear only a little bit of it, and it's almost time. So maybe you can think of winding it up too.
Yeah, actually,
It's
I'm
real.
answering a question, ma'am.
Okay, please do that, and then maybe we
Yeah,
can wind it up.
yeah,
I mean, the
I'm
flight.
done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So I'm done.
And thank you so much. I'm sure that it's wonderful.
Thank you for the
I heard
opportunity.
the first part. It is wonderful. Really interesting.
Thank you for the opportunity, and
Yeah.
I hope all of you took something away from
I
it.
didn't know that you were entering. You're so sorry for intervening.
No, no, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I think
Just
it's
into the bit.
almost 40 right now. Yeah, that's fine. If anybody has any questions, you can send it to me. Maybe I can just share my email here. Uh,
No, you can answer. Please complete the answer.
I think I've answered Dr. Vijayalakshmi, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
I just
If,
said that
Okay.
hermeneutics of suspicion is a
yes,
valid, but it is an interrogative stance. So then, if you go by hermeneutics of suspicion all the time, then we might miss the essence of the poem, or we might miss what the poet is actually trying to say. That's all. I mean, that's
yes.
all about it. And I'll just share my email here in case anybody has any questions. I think one of the participants did have a question, but since we don't have time, I can answer it through mail if you're interested. I'll just share it here.
Yeah, I shall paste the link, sorry, the email ID of yours
No,
here.
I'm just posting it
Yeah,
in the chat box. Yeah, both are
okay.
there. Both are right. Both are right. Okay, ma'am. Betsy,
Yeah.
ma'am. I'm happy you could at least join for some time.
I'm equally happy to listen to you.
So we would also like very much to thank Dr. Betsy Paul and Chrysalis. We have been that we could be part of this, and yeah, over to you, Dr. Betsy and Nima.
So thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. For the participants, there is a feedback link posted in the chat box. Please submit it to generate your e-certificates. And I take this opportunity to express my heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to all those who contributed to making this online lecture series, Chrysalis, a remarkable success. First and foremost, I would like to attend my deepest thanks to our presenter, Ms. Lakshmi Menon, and our moderator, Dr. R Vijayalakshmi, for their valuable presence. Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Dias Edie, our former principal, Professor Chaco Josby, for their continuous support. Professor Betsy Polsey, Director of Research, whose generosity and partnership have played an integral role in bringing this event to life, and to our HOD and other staff, other faculty from our department. A special thanks to our attendees for being here today. Your presence and enthusiasm have made this gathering all the more meaningful, and we truly appreciate your time and participation. As we draw this event to a close, let us carry forward the knowledge and connections and inspirations we have gained here today. So once again, on behalf of St. Aloysius and Chrysalis team, I thank everyone for your valuable time and cooperation in this session. See you next in the next session. Good night and thank you everyone.
Once more, it is my great privilege to thank Dr. Vijayalakshmi and Dr. Lakshmi Menon. It is really conversing with you. And okay, Dr. Lakshmi had talked a lot with me, explaining her ideas, and it was really wonderful listening to her. So
Thank you,
thanks
ma'am.
a lot for agreeing to be our guest. And Dr. Vijayalakshmi, thank you so much for being our moderator this time. Okay. So
Uh,
thanks a lot.
I deeply appreciate
And maybe I
Betsy,
should say bye.
ma'am, for the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you, Nima, for all the trouble that you've taken also.
Thank you, everyone.
And also thanks to all the here. They have been
Ma'am, the
Nima,
feedback link is not working.
so these there and then they there. Everyone, thank you so much. Thank you all. Bye
Somebody
bye.
has a the
And
Feedback link is not
also thanks
working,
for
ma'am.
all the participants who have joined us this time too. Please continue being with us.
Feedback link is not working, ma'am.
Nima, you could send the feedback link again. I think some of them are saying it's not working.
Yes, ma'am.
Good night, all. Thank you for being patiently listening to my talk. Uh, good night. Thank you, Dr. Betsy, once again.
Thank you, Dr. Betsy. Yeah, good night. We have had a very interactive audience too.
Right.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because your moderation and the presentation might have been very good. Okay, great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you for the opportunity. Fine. Good night.
The feedback thing is working. Actually, 6 of our participants have submitted it. So please do check that. Thank you. Thank
Ma'am,
you.
it's not working, ma'am.
Can you please